Despite feeling like I didn't get a lot of reading done this month, I actually read one collection of short stories, one short story on its own, one non-fiction book, and 2 fiction books. So it was actually a pretty good month. It's just that I felt very stressed when I was reading this month. I don't know what it was, but I just had no motivation to get any reading done. It's supposed to be enjoyable, and I have stopped reading a book in the past couple of days because I don't see the point in reading it if I'm not going to enjoy it in that moment of time. The first book that I read in February was The Rental Heart and Other Fairy Tales by Kirsty Logan. This is a collection of short stories, and they are all centred around the idea of the fairy tale. Some of them are based on fairy tales that we might know, or fairy tales that are quite obscure, and other ones seem to me to be very original. I don't want to go into too much detail because I did do a full review on this, and I will leave the link to that in the description. What I really liked about it was that it was very creative and imaginative. All of the magical elements of the story were very different to the next, so it never felt like the same story. However, the themes of the book are all very similar, so I would say to read it slowly, take your time with it, and not to rush through it, because that was my mistake. I read it too quickly and the themes kind of all blurred into one for me. The writing itself was very beautiful, and if you're looking for a collection that is centred mainly around women and also has aspects of LGBTQ romance, then I would say this is the collection for you. The second book that I finished in February I can't show to you because I got it from the library, so just imagine a beautiful purple cover with some strange figures on the front and the words "Negotiating with the Dead" by Margaret Atwood on the cover. This is a non-fiction book about writing. It is mainly focused towards writers who are starting to think about having their work published for the first time. And what I really liked about it was it explored some of the moral questions, I guess, and anxieties that writers get when they think about having their work published. And it kind of goes into the history of the writer and the way they're perceived by the public, how that's changed. And it also goes into a little bit of Margaret Atwood's own life and own story, but I felt like it was really well done because she kind of weaved her story in with more general subjects, and it never felt like she was talking too much about herself and her own work. I will say that it doesn't answer any of the questions that it raises, it just kind of puts them on the page and lets you see them and think about it for yourself. Definitely recommend this to anyone who likes to write. The third thing that I read was Burning Girls by Veronica Shanos. I think that's how you say the name, I'm not really sure. Again, I read this on Kindle and it is a short story, so I can't show you anything. It was actually free, and I can't believe that it was free because it was so good. So this is a short story about a young Jewish girl who is being trained by her grandmother to be a healer, and this all takes place in the 19th century in Poland when tensions were rising. So her family are kind of under threat from a lot of different places, including a demon. So there are magical elements involved in this story, and they're all tied into Judaism, and that's something that I've never seen before, so I really liked that aspect of it. It's only, I think, 36 pages long and it's free, so I would just get it. Really enjoyed reading this story. The next thing that I finished in February was The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. And again, I don't have a copy to show you because I got it from the library, so I don't know, imagine a cover with a mountain on it and it's really nice. I read this as a buddy read with Hannah from Story Nut, and I really enjoyed this buddy read. It was really interesting to see her perspective on it, and we've had some really great discussions. The Silmarillion is kind of like, I don't know how to explain this book. Okay, it starts with a kind of creation story for the world itself, and then it explains how the elves came to be and how the dwarves came to be and how the men came to be. It mainly follows the stories of the first elves. There were parts of this book that I really struggled with, particularly the geography. Sometimes Tolkien would just kind of start talking about where everything was and where all of the different types of elves had settled down, and I had no idea what was going on. So I'm not gonna lie, I did skip through a lot of those descriptions, but there were a lot of stories that really grabbed my attention and made me feel emotions, and just really loved them. There were a few really great adventure stories in this. There's also a lot more female characters in this than I've seen in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I feel like they play a bigger role. It's probably my favourite out of The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit and The Silmarillion. I just really like that whole creation story and finding out about the history of it. So I would recommend this to anybody who wants to find out some more background details about the Tolkien universe. And the last book I can actually show to you is The Circle by Dave Eggers. So this is about a young woman who has just started a job at The Circle, and The Circle is kind of this company who is basically kind of taken over the internet. Right now we all have different accounts for different things, but with The Circle it kind of connects all of those together and everything is under one account. You pay for things under this one account and all of your social networking is done under this one account and all of that kind of thing. And things escalate. We'll leave it at that. I had a few problems with this book. There were some parts of it that I didn't really find that realistic, but for the purposes of the story it kind of had to happen that way. I also found the first part of the book to be really slow. Basically this book is split into 3 sections. There's book 1, book 2 and book 3. Book 1 is like half of the book and it just felt too long. It felt like it could have been cut down. There were a lot of demonstrations of different kinds of technology, and while they were interesting and I felt like there were a little too many and maybe the demonstrations could have been woven into the plot a little better than just showing them as demonstrations. I felt really bombarded at the beginning with all of this information, and it kind of reflected how the main character feels because she's kind of been thrown into this job and a lot of social activities, and she has a family and she has an ex, but I just felt like there was too much going on. The main character also annoyed me a little bit at times because I just couldn't understand her motivations. I did get to know her a lot more towards the end of the book, but at the beginning I just felt really disconnected from her and mostly just found her decisions really annoying. There were also a few relationships in this that I just wasn't buying. My favourite part of this book was definitely book 2 and book 3. I really enjoyed those parts and the ending was just fantastic. I feel like this would have been so much better if it had just been a little bit shorter. It's just my opinion. Those were all of the books that I read in February. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye!